I look at a prayer list like that, and it's a humbling thing to see the struggles that people are going through. The scripture says that the goodness of God should lead us to repentance. And so when things are going better for me, I want to be repentant and turn to God and appreciate what he's doing in my life. And when the trials come, at the time of the trial, I want to turn to God too and trust him in the trial. And I look at the trials that people are going through, and I can't look through those names without it impacting me. This is, on that yellow sheet of paper is heartache. That's what that is. It's a paper of heartache because of trials. And makes us realize we live in a world that is tainted deeply with sin. And with that comes all of the diseases of a degenerate humanity that gets passed on from generation to generation. We're moving to a culmination point, and it's coming soon. Till we get there, let's keep looking up and supporting one another in every way that we can. I want to take these 2 months in the fall, 7 weeks, and I want to focus on a series that I am calling Anchor Your Faith in Your Family. From parenting faith to grandparenting faith. You say, well, I'm not a grandparent. Well, perhaps you're a parent, and it applies. And maybe you are a great-grandparent. It applies. Maybe you are none of the above. You deal with a lot of people that are in those categories. From parenting faith to grandparenting faith. I've worked on this for several years, off and on. This topic just at my house, and it's been a while since I spoke on this issue. I'm 66 years old. I'm now finding myself musing on what Susan and I can do to influence our grandchildren. It's not even debatable that America is in trouble, right? We are in trouble as a nation. Spiritually, we're in trouble morally and societally and financially. In every way you can think of, America is in trouble. Somebody needs to help America. We can have a small part in helping America in what we do with our families. There's forces at work that want to fundamentally change this nation. They want to change our laws, our institutions. They want to change our freedoms. Who would have thought that the phrase, "Make America great again," would be offensive? Or the phrase, American exceptionalism, would make people angry that are Americans. We're a hurting nation. How can we help a hurting nation? What part can we play in this? Well, Susan and I have been thinking about how we can help our grandchildren in a hurting nation, in a culture that is moving ever further away from God. In 2011, Dr. David Jeremiah wrote a book entitled, "I Never Thought I'd See the Day." Has anybody read that book? I'd never thought I'd see the day. Culture at the Crossroads. Now here's some of the chapter titles. I never thought I'd see the day when atheists would be angry. It used to be that atheists would laugh at people that believed in God. They saw us as deluded, and they mocked us, and they thought it was humorous. They're not laughing anymore. They're now mad. They're mad if you believe in God. You're part of the problem if you believe in God, and they get angry at it. It's changed in America. I never thought I'd see the day when Jesus would be so profaned. Now, he wrote that chapter in 2011, which was before the teacher in Florida had everybody write the name Jesus on a sheet of paper and put it on the floor and stomp on it. I never thought I'd see the day when marriage would be obsolete, when morality would be in a free fall, when the Bible would be marginalized, when the church would be irrelevant, when a Muslim state could intimidate the world, when America turned her back on Israel, when changing your mind could save your life. As I read the book, I thought, wow, I wish we could go back to 2011. Those seemed like the good old days compared to what's happening right now. We've slid and are sliding. So in considering what Susan and I can do to give our grandchildren the best chance in a faltering country, we've taken this to heart, and we are open for ideas, and we are going to be purposeful in trying to influence our grandkids in every way we can. So 7 weeks, we're going to cover this topic with some devotionals. I'm going to introduce the series on September the 12th, Sunday night. It's coming Sunday night. So this is just kind of a holdover till I get to the introduction on Sunday night. And then the weeks following, we'll follow this theme. Now, I hope one day that this will be a booklet that I can give to my grandchildren to influence them even more. I'm going to do it with a nautical theme. You're going to see that as we go through this. And it's going to have this ship motif, the book that we put together, because there's some lessons that come out of that slice of industry. And there's a lot in the Bible about it, by the way. So here's what I'd like from you. Some of you are grandparents, your parents, your grandparents. Some of you maybe are great-grandparents. Here's what I want from you. Would you send me your ideas, email or text me? Send me things that you have done that has helped you with your grandkids, influencing your grandkids. I want to know what you're doing to try to influence your grandchildren. What have you done in the past? What are you currently doing? I want that from you so we can share this to help as many of us as possible. I only have 3 grandkids, and I probably will never have more than 3 grandkids. Now, I work up in the church office, and I can tell you there's somebody in that office that every month they have a new grandchild. I'm not going to tell you what Cindy Levis's name is, but over and over and over again. Man, if we were in a race, I would never even come close. I only have 3. Some of you have far more. What have you done, or what are you doing that is helping you connect with your grandkids and influencing them spiritually? We don't want our grandkids to sink, right? We don't want them to sink. All the water in the world, however hard it tried, could never sink the smallest ship unless it got inside. All the evil in the world, the blackest kind of sin, can never sink your soul's fair craft unless you let it in. How do we keep it out of our lives? And I'm focusing on how can we keep it out of our grandchildren's lives, or help our children keep it out of the grandchildren's lives. So we're going to try to create families that are seaworthy, that will swim and not sink, and we're going to anchor our faith to our families. So in nautical terms, we're going to say, stay the course. We're going to stay the course. We're going to navigate without altering toward the influencing our children and our grandchildren spiritually. Here's some of the topics we're going to cover, or some of the titles. Sunday night is going to be a logbook of family values and family heritage. And then everybody is worth loving. Fantail frolicking. Anybody in here in the Navy? Been in the Navy? Does fantail frolic mean anything to you? You haven't heard the term. When I was a youth pastor in Fairfax Baptist Temple, we were going to have a graduation banquet for all the teenagers in our youth group, and the whole thing was going to be a nautical theme, and I was trying to create a program, and what were we going to call the skit time and the fun time. And I went to Brother Gil Hansen, who was the administrator of our Christian school there, and he was a retired Navy officer. And I said, I told him what I was doing. I said, is there any term in the Navy that has to do with fun and skits and a laughter time? He says, fantail frolic. I said, what's that? And so he explained to me what fantail frolicking was. Well, that's what September 27th is going to touch on. Don't skip skippering, discerning the times, out-of-boat experiences. 5 kernels of corn. And I'll share with you something that Susan did by way of tradition in our family with 5 kernels of corn. You know, there's a whole lot of phrases in the English language that comes out of the age of sail. Things like anchors away, high and dry, take the wind out of his sails, touch and go, slush fun, batten down the hatches, know the ropes, ship shape, over a barrel, pipe down, dead in the water, loose cannon, chock-a-block, cut and run, get underway, give a wide berth, hard and fast in the doldrums. Man, he keeled over, keel over. You know, the boat goes over, the keel comes up. There's a whole lot in our language that touches this industry. The lesson tonight is titled Shortening the Sails. Shortening the sails. Early mariners had to learn how to tame the seas to sail safely from continent to continent. Raging storms at sea were an ever-present danger, so much so that an award-winning program was made about storms at sea. I want you to see the introduction of it. So let's play that clip.
The weather started getting rough, the tiny ship was tossed. If not for the courage of the fearless crew,
Do you recognize it?
would be lost. The minnow would be lost.
All right. This isn't going to be the gospel according to Gilligan. You know, the wind would kick up, and when it kicked up, the sailors would have to shorten the sails, which means they would roll them up. They would draw them in. All right, they'd rope them up, make them shorter, so they would catch less wind. Because if a sail catches too much wind, it can drive the boat in a tempestuous storm, and it can sink the boat. It can run it to shore, run it aground. It can take it in a direction that it doesn't want to go. It's dangerous. So they shortened the sail to limit what that sail can do. My wife decorated my office with a sailing motif years ago, and she got me this. So you get the idea. On a sailboat, when these sails are all the way down, opened up fully, it catches more wind. And if it's catching too much wind and it's dangerous, then they shorten it up. They roll it up and rope it where it's not fully down. And they can adjust how much of the sail actually is exposed to catch wind. And so they have to shorten it in order to limit its effect, to limit what it can do. So shortening the sail means you're limiting what that sail can do. This is the nautical image I want to leave you with tonight. Shortening the sail so that it's limited in what it can do. Now, if you're in fair weather on open sea, you drop that sail down all the way, catch all the wind you can, and let her drive. There's other times you have to limit what that sail can do. Now, with that in mind, I want you to go to Isaiah chapter 50. You didn't get a handout, did you? Nobody got a handout. Do I have a man that wants to run to my office, and when you walk in my office door, right there on the left are handouts? All right, Doug, thank you. As soon as you walk through my office door, on the left, there's a stack. Sorry about that. Isaiah 50, verse 1. Let's look there. Thus saith the Lord, where is the bill of your mother's divorcement, whom I put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Behold, for your iniquities have ye sold yourselves, and for your transgressions is your mother put away. Wherefore, when I came, there was no man. When I called, there was none to answer. Is my hand shortened at all, that it cannot redeem? Or have I no power to deliver? Behold, at my rebuke I dry up the sea. I make the rivers a wilderness. Their fish stinketh, because there's no water, and dieth of thirst. I clothe the heavens with blackness. I make sackcloth their covering. Now here's the overview of this chapter. The northern kingdom of Israel is in a bad way. And that bad way is of her own doing. She has nobody to blame but herself. God called her to repent and to return to him, and she would not do it. So in this text tonight, God is challenging Israel to produce the divorce papers if he divorced their mother. Show me the divorce papers if I divorced her. That's what he's challenging her with. Okay, the handouts are coming out. If I divorced your mother, show me the paperwork. I want to know the name of the creditors. If I sold Israel to pay off my debts, tell me who the creditors are. God is challenging the nation that's accusing him, and God is refusing to accept responsibility for Israel's plight. Oh, Israel's in a bad way. But she sold herself by her own sin. She has nobody to blame but herself. She was the cause of her mother being sent away. Now, that's what's happening in this chapter. That's what's happening in this passage. God will not take responsibility for the people's sin. And when they said, you divorced our mother, well, show me the paperwork. Well, you sold us to our enemies. Oh, show me, give me the names of the creditors that I sold you to pay my debt. God will not accept their accusation. He will defend himself, and he will not take the responsibility for their way. So, lesson number 1 on your handout is this. My sin is my problem. My sin is my problem. My sin is my doing. That's why he said at the end of verse 1, behold, for your iniquities have you sold yourselves, and your transgressions your mothers put away. We can't blame God. That's your fill-in. We can't blame God for our problems. When things go wrong in our lives, it is not God's fault. I must face up to what I've done. Now, folks, here's something we have to develop with our grandchildren. They need to understand that their sin is their sin. It's their sin. They chose to do wrong. They have to learn, they have to be taught to accept responsibility. It's your children's responsibility to teach your grandchildren to be responsible. But you can help. You can reinforce. And that should be important to us, that our grandkids start onboarding the understanding that I do wrong and I'm responsible for the wrong that I do. And I can think of I don't remember the details, Susan could probably tell us. Something happened with our grandson, Canaan. He's the oldest grandson. And I think Jamie felt she provoked him to anger. And Jamie apologized, and he said, no, Mom, I got angry on my own. It was in my heart. And then he apologized to his mother. And then Jamie texts us, I think he's getting it. So she was rejoicing. But they have to understand that they are responsible for their actions. Now, they live in a culture that tells them the opposite. The culture says, it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you got mad and broke your hand by punching the wall. It's the teacher's fault that provoked you by telling you you couldn't talk on your cell phone during class. So put the blame on the teacher. It's not your fault that you were cut from the team. It's not your fault that you didn't get the gold medal. It's not your fault that your employer fired you. The culture is always looking for somebody else to blame. And we need to teach our grandchildren that we are to blame for our own sin. They have to accept that responsibility. It's a good lesson to learn early in life. Not my brother nor my sister, but it's me, O Lord. Okay, yeah. Because of my sin, I need God's help. Personal responsibility is a lesson to teach our grandchildren, to help our children teach our grandchildren. Lesson number 2, God can do anything, no limits to God. Now that's in the next verse, in verse 2 of Isaiah 50, where it says, is my hand shortened at all that it cannot redeem? Or have I no power to deliver? Is my hand shortened? Think of the shortening of a sail. You shorten a sail so you limit its ability to catch wind. And God says, is my hand shortened that it cannot save? No, his hand isn't shortened that it cannot save. God can do what he needs to do. It's a picturesque way of telling us that God has no limits. He can do anything. Now here's some proofs of his abilities. I've given 4 passages here. Proof that God has unlimited ability, and 3 of the 4, he uses oceans and water to develop this theme. Number 1, proof 1, God rebukes the waters and they obey him. That's in verse 2. Behold, at my rebuke, I dry up the sea. I make the rivers a wilderness. Their fish stinketh because there's no water and dieth for thirst. The questions are, is my hand shortened at all that it cannot redeem? Or have I no power to deliver? And the answer to both of those questions is no. It's no. No, my hand is not shortened that it cannot save. No, he does not have no power to deliver. Don't let the double negative fool you. What he's saying is, I can redeem, I can deliver, and then he offers this proof. He says, behold, at my rebuke I dry up the sea. When did God speak and the sea was dried up? Exodus, crossing of the Red Sea. When did God speak and the rivers became a wilderness and the fish stank and there is no water? When did he speak and the river dried up? Crossing the Jordan. He told the people to go down, the priests carry the ark, go down. And they went down and God spoke and dried up the water and they went over on dry ground. Proof number 2, God dresses the heavens. That's verse 3. I clothe the heavens with blackness and I make sackcloth their covering. When did God clothe the heavens? Creation, the beginning. He created, he clothed. He's giving proofs of what his abilities are, whether it's leading the people out of Egypt through the Red Sea, or leading them into the promised land over the Jordan River, or clothing the heavens through his creative acts. God has the power to perform his will. There are no limits. He can do anything, everything, any place, any time, with no limits. Your children and your grandchildren need to know God can. God can. So talk about it to your grandkids. Talk about it. Talk about the mighty things that God can do. Not just the mighty things that God did in the Bible, but the mighty things that God is doing in your life. Things that you can observe that you say, that's God. That's the hand of God. Tell them about it. Proof number 3, God measures the seas in the hollow of his hand. Look in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 12. Isaiah 40 and verse 12. It says, God says, who hath measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? And meted out heaven with a span, and comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure, and weighed the mountains in scales, and the hills in a balance. Who hath directed the Spirit of the Lord, or been his counselor, and hath taught him? With whom took he counsel? And who instructed him? And taught him in the path of judgment, and taught him knowledge, and showed him the way of understanding. Who did all that to God? I like the way Eugene Peterson wrote it in his paraphrase. Eugene Peterson, in heaven now, but he was a Presbyterian pastor, and he was a theologian, and he was an author, and he took the Bible and paraphrased it to try to help his grandchildren understand the scriptures. That was why he did what he did. He realized that his grandkids are little, they can't read the Bible and fully understand, so he paraphrased it to make it a little easier for them to understand. He wasn't trying to do a version, it was just rewording so his grandchildren could understand. Now here's the way he rewrote this. He paraphrased this. I'm reading from the Message. Who has scooped up the ocean in his 2 hands? or measured the sky between his thumb and little finger? Who can reach out and measure with the breadth of his hand? Who has put all earth's dirt in one of his baskets, weighed each mountain and hill? Who could ever tell God what to do or taught him his business? What expert would he have gone to for advice? What school would he attend to learn justice? What God do you suppose might have taught him what he knows and showed him how things work? Now, that was Peterson's paraphrase. Who's taught God? Nobody. Isaiah is telling the children of Israel just how great God is. Here's how great he is. God reaches down and he scoops up the ocean in his hands. Israel never learned the lesson of how powerful God is. They never fully understood that they had an ocean scooping God that could do anything that he wanted to do. And so she crumbled as a culture, and God sent her away into Assyrian captivity. God repeats himself to the captive Israelites now in Isaiah 59. So go there. Isaiah 59, look in verse 1. He's talking to these Israelites again. They're in their troubled time. And he says in Isaiah 59:1, "Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear, but your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you that he will not hear." God can save, God can hear, God has all of the ability. It's our sin gets in the way. God's hand is not shortened. He has unlimited ability. So when he moves, tell your grandkids and make it exciting. Become a storyteller. You can tell a story in a very boring way, or you can make the story interesting. And make the story interesting. Now you have to tell the truth, but tell the truth of what God is doing and tell them in a way that it just captivates their imagination. And use your imagination as you tell of his wondrous works. 150 years after Isaiah was gone, Jeremiah comes on the scene. Now the northern kingdom of Israel is gone. They didn't listen. They're in captivity. And now Jeremiah is dealing with the southern kingdom of Judah, and they're following in the same footsteps. There's impending judgment. The Babylonians are about to attack, and God is using Jeremiah to get his message to the kingdom of Judah. And God is using a minor prophet by the name of Habakkuk to get the message to Judah. And God tells Habakkuk, well, they're coming, and they're going to fish for you. They're going to put their hook in you. They're going to catch you in their fish nets. They're going to use their drag net and circle you. That's the motif that God uses to Habakkuk. You're going to be fished by the Babylonians and caught in their net and in their hook. Judah needed God. Why would they turn from a God that could scoop the oceans and try to make it on their own? Why would they do that? Proof number 4, God puts the sea in its place and he decrees that it remain there. Now here's the way Jeremiah said it. Go to Jeremiah chapter 5. He's trying to get them to understand the God that they should serve. The God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Jeremiah wants them to understand that God. So he is explaining this God to them. In chapter 5 verse 22, "Fear ye not me." Now it's God speaking, saith the Lord. "Will ye not tremble at my presence, which have placed the sand for the bound of the sea by a perpetual degree, that it cannot pass it? And though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet they cannot prevail. Though they roar, yet they cannot pass over it." So here's the picture. God takes the sea and he puts it in a lowland area, and he wraps sandy beaches all the way around the sea, and he limits the sea's ability to get beyond the sandy beach that he created for it. That rebellious sea will beat that that beach with its waves. It'll keep beating the beach with its waves, trying to break through. But God has He's decreed that sea to stay in that place, and it can't get beyond the sandy shore. Now that's how powerful God is. He creates the sea, puts it where he wants it, says stay there, and it stays there. It roars, but it cannot pass over. Now folks, that's a lot of power. That's the power that God has. The power to put the sea where he wants it. The one that can scoop the oceans in his hand. He's a powerful God. Lessons for my grandchildren. Number one, God's abilities are not the problem. My sin is my problem. Okay, they need to understand that. Number two, God can do anything. His hand is not shortened. His hand is not shortened. Someone wrote a song, "Behold our God, who has held the ocean in his hands, who has numbered every grain of sand. Kings and nations tremble at his voice. All creation rises to rejoice. Behold our God, seated on his throne. Come, let us adore him. Behold our King. Nothing can compare. Come, let us adore him." I want you to hear some of the music along with the lyrics. This is done in a big group in a public setting. So we're going to play a little bit of this song. Wonderful things that God can do. And play good music. Play good music. Majestic music that exalts God. That makes an impact. Music is emotional. Now it needs to have truth in the lyrics, but it needs to capture our heart. And good music can capture our heart, and it can capture your kids' and your grandkids' hearts. We should listen to God and fear him because he's powerful. Isaiah told us that in chapter 5, verse 22. So let's think about impacting our grandkids in any way that we can. And I'm going to close with this. I'm going to encourage us to have a scuttlebutt session with our grandkids. And you know what scuttlebutt is, right? Right? You've heard the term. You have heard the term, scuttlebutt. When a ship was scuttled, they would drill holes in the side in the hull just below the water line. So the water would come in. They're going to scuttle the ship. They're going to drill holes in it and sink it to the bottom of the sea. So scuttle meant the drilling of the holes. So the ship would sink. And when it sunk, it was scuttled on the ocean floor. In the early days of sailing, fresh water was taken aboard ships in wooden casks or wooden barrels, also called butts. B-U-T-T-S. So I want you to visualize a large wooden whiskey barrel. Now you've seen wooden whiskey barrels. A large wooden whiskey barrel, but it's got fresh water in it on the ship. That's what a butt was, or a barrel was, or a cask was. And they would scuttle the barrel by drilling a hole in it down low, and they'd cork it. And the sailors would gather around the water barrel and reach down and uncork and fill a cup, and cork it. And they would stand around the barrel and they would drink fresh water. And as they stood around and just talked, it was a place to just, we would use the term fellowship. But it was a place they would just gather and get caught up on the news. And it often was a place of gossip and rumor. And so scuttlebutt means rumoring and gossip. But I'm just using the term as a time to get together around the table and talk with your kids, with your grandkids. A family discussion around the table. Make dinner a family affair. When your grandkids come to visit you, eat dinner with them. Not with cell phones in your hand, not in front of a TV, but sit around a table and talk. Let them feel the family and be a part of the family. And we just had our grandkids with us, and every meal we ate, we all sat around the table together, and we start out by reaching out. We hold hands all the way around. I don't know why I did this. I don't ever remember doing this before. But as Oliver took my hand and we're in a circle, I said, Oliver, I'm going to squeeze your hand. And when I squeeze your hand, then you squeeze Mommy's hand. And she's going to squeeze Daddy's hand, and he's going to squeeze Tana's hand, and he's going to squeeze Gigi's hand, and she's going to squeeze Brooklyn's hand, and Brooklyn will squeeze my hand, and we'll make the squeeze go all the way around the circle. And then I'll do it again. So now he's waiting, and I squeeze his hand, and you can see it all the way around. It comes back around to me. I squeeze again, and it would go around, and we'd probably go around 3 times, and everybody's squeezing all at the same time, and they're laughing, and they're having fun, and that was the purpose. I want them to enjoy us being together as a family. And that really became a pain, because every time we sat down, it was, can we play the squeeze game? Can we play the squeeze game? So we started every meal with the squeeze game. But be together as a family and talk with your grandkids and hold hands and pray and make dinner time a time where you're all together on the same page and pray together. Some of the things you can do in a dinner time scuttlebutt session. Tell them what you read in your devotions, what happened at school. Plan a family activity, coordinate family member schedules. Pastor Eifert always asked his kids, who did you bless today? And they went around and told who they blessed that day. Share witnessing efforts or track distribution and tell a funny story. Grandkids love to hear a funny story told about their parents. They do. And when we get together, usually one of them, Pop, tell us again when Mommy had to learn to eat peas. So I go through the whole story and I make it as funny as I can make it. And they're laughing. They thoroughly enjoy it because their mommy would not eat her peas in the high chair. And I told her eventually, you will eat your peas or I will spank you. And I'm putting the spoonful of peas out to her lip, and I'm showing the kids what she did. And so I put the spoon down. I took her in the bedroom, spanked her, came back, put her in the high chair. We're going to eat our peas. I will spank you again. Put the peas down, took her in the back bedroom, spanked her, came, put her in the high chair. We're going to eat our peas. Spanked her 3 times, spanked her 4 times. Well, the kids are now laughing. They're really laughing because their mommy got 4 spankings in a row. And then you know what she did? She ate her peas. And today she loves them. She loves peas. Grandkids love stories. And what you're trying to do is create a family identity You want your grandkids, you want your kids to identify with the family. That will help them. The storm is coming. As they get older, the culture is going to tell them all sorts of awful things. You don't have to be a boy. If you want to be a girl, you can be a girl. I don't know that we've seen the depth of degradation that's going to be thrown at our grandchildren or great-grandchildren, or children in some of your cases. They need family identity to help weather this storm. Mom and a dad and kids and grandkids, you're all in it together. Now, in a church, you have all kinds of situations. Some of you may not have a husband, may not have a wife. We will have people whose the mother is saved, the husband is lost, or the husband is saved and the mother is lost, or they're single parents, or there's joint custody and you don't even have your kids the whole time. And there's all kinds of scenario. Take what you have, whatever your situation is, and try to create family identity with your grandkids. Right? Be a part of their life. Be interested in what's going on in their life. Make sure you know what's happening in their life.